So welcome. Today the session is to look at slings suitable for amputees. We've got a few suggestions that we'll share with you because we know it can be quite difficult to have a one sling that fits all types of amputee scenarios. So we do understand that actually we need to have a choice. And amputees can be quite daunting for therapists to safely transfer. So we do have some options which we'll share. Of course, it's going to be difficult for me to demonstrate. I don't have an amputee model, but I do have a dummy that I can use in certain demonstrations. So welcome to those that have just joined us. If you'd kindly turn your cameras off, as we will try and record the session. And please use the chat if you have any questions. So looking at amputees, the first thing I always ask, and our team would ask, is what type of hoist is being used? Because you will have the loop type standard spreader bar configuration or the clips, so the stud type ones. So we know which one to start with. So we go to the loops or the clips. The second question is really to understand length of amputation. So if it's single, bilateral, how long is the residual limb? So welcome viewers. Oh, thank you for turning off your camera. So we know we need to understand a few things. First is the hoist, length of stump, single or bilateral, then their ability to sit up, what body tone they've got, what extra support's needed. Because quite often, if you've got someone that has a knee and below knee amputation, you can use a standard sling. It's when the residual limb is shorter, high through hip, then it becomes a bit more tricky. We need to look at something else. But to start with, Jude, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to show you. Good morning. This is Judith, my colleague. Standard sling, so standard straight leg, fast fit shape. If this is put on, it's got quite a large aperture, but if it's put on in the hammock type pickup, so the legs are hammocked underneath each other. And of course, we're going to make it look really easy. And that's because, you know, we've got a nice open chair and we've got an able-bodied model. But it's just to give you ideas that then perhaps you can use this technique in your scenarios. But hammocking the legs, hit that one underneath there, will close up the aperture so that actually there's not much of a hole at the back. And if you have got knee and below, then the residual limb will nestle within the sling. I'm just going to hook it up and show you so we can see what it looks like. Now, there's going to be, you know, issues with this type of pickup that you'll have to go on red, that you'll have to take into account. So you're going to be quite open. The pickup is like a seat. The knees will be closed together. So you think about whether that might impact on sensitivity, things like that. So you just need to be mindful of that. But certainly with this type of application, we can see that the aperture is closed up. So the worry is with a residual limb that's quite short, there's no weight to it. So consequently, it may then just ride up and slip backwards through this aperture. So we have to be mindful of that. But by closing the legs together on this, you do then close the aperture. There's still enough for hygiene transfers if required, but it's reduced. So thinking about this is the most straightforward type if it's knee and below. So certainly long limb amputations for this type of sling. We can also add a chest strap. So if you think I need my client to feel a bit more secure, then a chest strap or waist support can be added just to keep them feeling more safe in there. So that's just the basic shape that we know is being used like that. But bearing in mind, you know, it will close the legs together. Any questions on that one? So the next most popular style, which you probably might know of, is the Fast Fit Deluxe. So the Fast Fit Deluxe is a different shape sling. It's quite square and it has these individual paddles that wrap around each femur. So again, it's for longer limb amputations, so single or bilateral. And because it's got an aperture here, it can be used for hygiene transfers. So it's a sling that has got that aperture. If clothing is removed, you can use it for that as well. So these leg paddles effectively will then wrap around the residual limb so that they would then comfortably sit within that paddle. And you can either connect the legs together like that and then take the outside tape through one of the inner ones, depending on the size of the thigh, and then attach it. There's lots of colour coding on here, so if you need to position more reclined, that you don't want, you know, the body weight will change, so you can recline slightly if needed by using a longer shoulder tape. But we just take up the sack and we can then just get an idea of these paddles. So these paddles work independently, which makes the thigh sort of nestle within the paddles quite nicely. We can see here the length of that paddle. So slings we need to sort of position towards the back of the knee or as close as possible for positioning. And so we can then picture an amputation, a residual limb within that paddle there. So again, it's still long limb. There used to be a little guide of about 27 centimetres from the groin to the point of amputation. Anything shorter than that, we then would worry that the limb wouldn't have the weight to stay within the paddle and it may ride up and then have potential to slip back down through that commode aperture. So longer limb amputations, this again is a really good solution. And also because of the pickup of the style of the sling, it's from the outside, it's going to pick up and give more comfort. Outside pickup is good for more hip support. So think about that for this style. The other thing with this one, it's quite versatile in how it can be applied. I just take the legs off, Jude, please. I just want to show you. Actually, no, it's fine. We don't take it. It's easier to clean this. So what we have learned is that, say we've got a right single amputation, then taking the paddles, you can take both paddles over to give the support, as long as you attach both. Or maybe clearer to show you, if you just hammock the leg, and then if we've got the amputation this side, that goes over to support the stump there. So you just then connect two sides. Let me just do it. The long tape goes through both of them to support. We're going to hold the other side up. Yeah. So you've got it hammocked to start with, where the legs are underneath each other, but then you've got that one tape that you can take back over, or do it traditionally in the hammock position. Bearing in mind, like the first time, you're going to be more open and vulnerable, so you need to be mindful of that. Mandy. You've got someone a bit wriggly.
Someone's just asked if you could just repeat that bit again.
Yeah. Let's just Jude, if you just jump up a minute. So starting with feeding the legs one under the other. So we've got that. So that's the hammocking position. Then do you want to sit down? So say Judith has got to the right, this left leg amputation, bring that side back and that goes over the stump. Let me hook it up and then you can see. You need to just thread, make sure you thread both of these loops through. And then we're going to hook it up. It's a bit fiddly, and if you have the sling in front of you, it's easier to show. I'm going on red, yes. But effectively, you've hammocked it, so you've laid the legs on top of each other. So you need to have the top paddle going over the stump. So make sure you've got the paddle on top. So if it's at one side, it's at that side, or you're going to reverse it to go the other side. Okay, yeah. So it's just nestling there over this one side. So if you've got single, it's mostly for single, you couldn't do it. It will again close the aperture up.
That?
So it's closing.
It and then.
We okay? Do you have a question? Sorry, just hear voices.
This bit here, she's like pulled this one back through.
I can hear voices. Has someone got a question, or do we need to repeat it? We're good.
Someone's just asked what sling this is.
This is the Fast Fit Deluxe. So it's a standard sling, Fast Fit Deluxe. It's very well known and used widely for amputees because it's such a square shape. The legs are very square. They will lay on top of each other like that. Let's just show you again. Just hold it up. We can see the shape of the sling. And if we just lay it down, so start with laying it on top of each other like that. So that's how it should be. And if we've got the amputation that side, gently feed that over it. You hold that, Jude. And then take the longer tape, this side, through both that inner one there and this one here to connect them. You need to make sure you're connecting two, and then you've got the residual limb within that paddle before you hook it up. Hopefully that was clear. Okay, be good. All right. Any questions? No more. Oh, there's a question.
Why would you choose this over a sling without an aperture?
Because you can toilet. So this one's got access for toileting. So we will show you that's the full sling later, but certainly lots of scenarios you need a sling, a divided leg sling for hygiene transfers. So that's the main reason. And also if you've got to put it on in a chair, because it's easier to put the sling on with a divided leg within a chair. It's quite hard then to do a full sling without the aperture unless it's left in place. So it's for, you know, the sling's got to be removed. That's the main reasons. But the other style, which we know is also popular for long limb, still on long limb amputations, full body support, is the deluxe, this universal deluxe. It's the universal deluxe sling that has these nice paddles too. Again, it's a divided leg, so we can use this for inserting within a chair. So the sling is just put on and then taken off, but it's got the aperture for hygiene. But this one is slightly simpler. It's not so square, so it's got to be used traditionally round each femur and connected by the outside. So it'll still give a nice pick up from the outside, good support. The paddles are really deep, so they will support residual limbs. But what we can do on this one is have a little strap. It's got one here. So this is a little strap that feeds through a channel depending on what side you need it. And it would be in the sling and it would then help to keep that residual limb in place. So as I said earlier, you know, sometimes there's no weight and it can move about. So having a little soft, it's like a waist support, but it goes around the thigh, then that would keep the limb there and secure. But again, this is still looking at the long limb amputations. You right, Ray? So this is the Universal Deluxe. So if you have a look on the website, the Universal Deluxe in, you know, as a standard, then we can add the strap if needed. We can add the waist support, chest strap if needed, and all the slings will come also with a head support if needed. But what we can do on this one is I might just hook it up, yeah, and show. So this is a really good shape for lots of scenarios actually, but particularly good for long limb amputees. Strong yellow. It's a deluxe shape. It's got the outside leg picker, these small paddles. So it's quite good for regulars, anyone that's got some movement, because you've got individual support on these leg paddles. But if you have some sensitivity, a heavy limb, a heavy residual limb, it might be useful to have an extra tape here. So this is a hip tape, and this will be applied to the hoist and just help to lift that hip area. So if you think about slings which are, you know, your bottom can sink, and if you've got this sore, heavy limb, lifting that hip area slightly will then distribute the weight and take pressure from behind that leg. They're really helpful to have, and they work brilliantly on this shape. So it's a tape that you can detach. Just show you. It's a little bit closer. So it's a tape that fixes on to a loop on the sling. It's got a slider to adjust the tension accordingly. You need to find the tension before you take the slack up, of course. We're not going to achieve it very well just here. But if I can just explain. So I've set this tension when I lowered Judith down, just to lift up slightly and to pick up simultaneously with the leg. So they would pick up together. It's too tight, it was going to force the hips up first. And it's too loose like that, it's doing nothing. But just if I can't do it too much because I need to lower Jude down, but just subtly there. And if you've got significant pain, hips, the limb, then it's quite useful to have. They're great for adjusting things as well. So if you've got to pick up, someone may have curvature, sort of a scoliosis, and they're slightly asymmetrical. We can adjust these tapes asymmetrically, which will help then to give a better transferring position. So it's a great shape and very versatile. Still can use for toileting because the aperture's there. But remembering it's a long limb still, a long limb scenario. And we can do this shape in an in-situ. So it can be provided in a fabric that can be left in place for extended periods. So it's quite a useful shape if that suits your particular scenario. Got any questions on that one? Good. So that's the Universal Deluxe. So going on to I'm going to bring in a different hoist now, and this will be possibly the full one that most people know. We call this the in-situ recline. So it's an all-in-one, and I have got a dummy, which I apologise, but it's helpful to show. with a really short right leg and a through hip left, so we can change about. But this type of sling, which is the recline, Ree, do you have that we can just bring up? So on the website, all the slings are detailed with images and lots of information to help you, but I'll show you this one because I know this one probably is a really good go-to for many scenarios for amputees. And it is basically an oblong with a little groin strap here, but it's an all-in-one which needs to be applied on the bed. Very difficult to get it on in the chair, but there's lots of information for you. It will give you the dimensions, rough body dimensions to help with sizing, codes, fabric, all the information that you might need. That's the sling size, so you can see the actual size of the sling. And where to measure. So where to measure for this one would certainly be around the shoulders, and from C7 around the bottom into the back of the knee. So that would, if you take those two measurements, then hopefully it would lead you to a standard size. And then there's an application video there. So I don't know if you can scroll through the photographs. Have you got? So you can see the actual support. Again, you can have it with a head support, a chest strap if needed, and the hip tapes can be applied. So with this one, the hip tapes are, the loop is there ready, so it can be just requested. Thank you. So a very good, general shape. However, toileting is often requested, and it's quite tricky with this style. So if you only have this one because you've got really short or high amputations, then it's probably the only style that's going to work. But then what you do for toileting. So we can provide one with an aperture, so it'd have to be a separate style, or separate sling. You have one. And it is the same shape, but with an aperture here. Let's just make sure we can see us clearly. So it looked like that. Still tricky, to get the aperture in the right place. And it would need to be put on the bed, of course. But it's the only solution if you need to sort of use a sling for very short amputations, but need an aperture for toileting. So this is the in-situ recline, but with a commode aperture. And we can give you the dimensions. Sometimes people ask for the dimensions there, but it's just a standard formula that we work out. But the sling itself, I just explain shape. It's got this little pommel here. So the pommel comes between the legs. And if there is any residual, then it will lift slightly just to help balance the legs, so they don't roll in. So with the other demonstrations we've seen, the legs tend to roll in when you hammock, whereas this will lift you with this pommel, and it helps just then to separate, and it's a bit more comfortable. But often what you also have to take into account is the hoist. So hoists are really important, the right combination of sling and hoist, to make sure that you've got the most comfortable solution. If you've got someone that has got significant pain and they have a very narrow spreader bar, all those tapes are going to go up to the spreader bar and almost squash and protract the body. So it's really important to bear in mind the width of that spreader bar to make sure it's as wide as they are, or the wide as their widest point, to ensure comfort. I know with amputees, sometimes they're very top heavy, and if they're worried about falling, you might need a 4-point spreader bar. So take the tapes out to a 4-point or an H-frame type situation. So the tapes then go that way. and it makes it open up more. So it makes it more comfortable. So it's really, to get everything right, got to have the right shape and the right type of hoist. Again, if you've got someone that's very tiny in a wide spreader bar, they're going to be sort of swimming within it. So it's one of those things just to bear in mind. I did put this little mitt in because these are really good just to smooth things out. If you're applying the sling and it's getting caught, or there's some resistance, just put a mitt on and it helps to just ease things. And the other thing I just put in there was this neck roll. Often a full head support can be a little bit too hooded and force the head forward, and there's no peripheral vision, so it can be sometimes too much. Whereas this is a separate accessory neck roll that just nestles in the neck like that. It can be positioned to the side if someone leans over, but it just works with most styles. And in this one, you can just put it around the neck and then secure the tapes through the shoulder tape here. You just feed it through and then back through the slider and adjust it once it's set, and threading through both sides of the slider, then you can leave it in place. But that just cups the neck quite comfortably there, which is quite good. This style, so this is the recline, in-situ recline, is generally made in our Superfine Plus fabric, which is a 3-dimensional spacer mesh. So it's quite spongy. It is a mesh. It can be used for bathing. And it's part of the in-situ range. So if someone's leaving the sling on for extended periods, then this is one of the fabrics that we would suggest. It's very smooth. There's no handles on, so we make it as smooth and seam-free as possible. It's not a pressure relieving product, so you still have to monitor the pressure. But if it's the right size, it's been applied correctly, there's very few issues with it. But still, with leaving a sling on, you need to monitor for movement, for any repositioning, pressure problems. So you don't leave it on and forget. But certainly, it's a very popular, one of our most popular slings for general scenarios and amputees. Do you have any questions, Ree?
Someone's just asked, is the high easy sling suitable for amputees?
Okay, so yes, we've been asked about a sling we haven't covered yet, so please bear with me. I will come on to that, because in fact it will be the next one. So you've prompted me to bring that one up. But are there any other questions regarding this?
No, someone just asked about if it had head support, but I said no, but we do have a
We
version.
can offer head support. So any of the slings you can add things on. So head supports, waist supports, chest supports. They would be depending on where you would like them positioned. So waist, literally at the waist. Chest would be on the chest for a gentleman or under the bust for a lady. The preference is dependent on if there's a peg, if they want something higher, so that they, it depends on different scenario. But that's the thing then. But so everything we've seen then has been so far suitable for the loops. So your loop type situation, loop coat hanger spray bars. So that's those ones. Hopefully there's no more questions on that. But Judith just reminded me, so if you've got someone, and often we do have veterans who've got really good upper body tone, they're very strong, but unfortunately they've had some incident where they've ended up being an amputee, but they can cope with like a toilet sling. So we do have a toilet sling that looks like a toilet sling, but if you've got a short amputation, single or bilateral, then it has a little pocket that cups the stump. Just swap it out for me. It looks very strange, But if we can just picture, if I just put this round Jude, it works like a standard toilet access sling, like a hygiene sling, where it goes round the waist and then flips there. But what we have here, and I don't know whether we can, when we hook you up, it may be easier to see. So we'll apply it exactly the same as you would do a normal toilet sling, imagining you've got
This will be too big.
But you cross it through, and I'm just going to hook it up so that you can see the pockets at the back. Just going to bring them back. You need to shuffle back a bit. That's okay. Just feed that one through there. So connect the legs. The legs have got another little modesty loop, and that's so that if you've got a single, you can adjust the tapes to counterbalance the different lengths and distribute the weight a little bit more. So legs, and then we'll go on yellow. It looks rather strange because we've just got legs, of course. But so this is a scenario where you've got someone that's really got good tone, good ability. They may self-hoist, they may want to go to transfer to the toilet themselves, but they've got quite short or high amputations. So we then have, okay?
Yeah.
So making sure the sling is firmly on.
This looks slightly big.
Yeah, it's slightly too big. She wants to hold that up. So round the back, which looks very strange, we have these little pockets, and they can be single or double, depending on the situation, but they're made in a soft fabric with a lining there, and then they're just eased back like curtains there to access for hygiene. So a bit fiddly, but it will mean that if there is a short limb, so short or quite high, it won't fall backwards through that aperture. So it'll still enable hygiene. So you've just got to ease it gently, not pull it right like that, because then the stump will fall back, but it just ease it to access, but it will just support that residual limb in the event that it does slip back or it's quite a high one. So that's the best scenario if you've got someone that's got a good tone, so very good tone. Are you all right with that one, Ree?
Yeah.
So if you need to look at that, it's called the pocket amputee. Oh, there was a question, I think, then.
Someone just asked, are these slings made to measure or off the shelf?
All of them are off the shelf. So if you look at the sizing guides, all of the things I've got a standard sizing guide. The ones on the website are generally in stock. The only thing we'd have to manufacture would be if we're doing some like a specific pocket. So we'd have to, you know, if we've got a certain measurement that we've got to follow, we would have to then, that be delayed to get the pocket made. And if we have to tailor make. So if your sizing is not, you can't find it on the website, then we would manufacture. So we'd need to a measurement and assessment for that. But standard sizes are all off the shelf. Yeah.
Could you just go over the in situ leaving in time limit and what we recommend for that?
Okay. So leaving a product in situ is down to the individual situation. So you have to thoroughly risk assess for that. And that is down to many things. So how long we are transferring Judith into that chair. Are we intending to leave her all day? Are we intending to leave her for an hour and then she's repositioned, checked, maybe moved to a different place? So it's really down to the individual, and it does really need to be risk assessed. So we don't say, because it's called a leave-in sling, leave it in and forget. Got to really make sure that, you know, you check, you monitor for pressure. You still monitor in case they've lost position, they've shuffled down, or the sling's bunched up. So things like that. So leaving in a sling is a difficult answer. There's no black and white solution. It's all down to the individual situation. And often people want the sling left in because they don't want to be handled all the time. It reduces the handling, and it makes it easier for carers if the sling's there. But positioning the sling is quite tricky at times, and particularly in tight chairs. And then it's hard to get the sling in, then back. So it's avoiding all that shearing. So there's lots of benefits, but it is always down to the individual situation, and an individual risk assessment by the whole team. So the family, the patient, the carers, the healthcare professionals, making sure that it's the right solution for that patient. So yes, I'm sorry I can't give you a definite answer, but that's it really. Right, okay, we've only got the other hoist type to look at now. So I'm just going to bring in a standard high easy. So thanks, Jude. So a high easy, well, we're looking at a clipped stud type hoist now. This is very different. And you may find that you don't ever come across these, which is good. You haven't got to think about it. But it's a different type of spreader bar. It's a wishbone cradle, which is a lovely open spreader bar, but it has these studs on. So a stud at the shoulders and a stud at the knee, just above the knee there. So really easy. The sling just slots on. There's no loops to consider. There's only one positioning for the loops, for the clips. But because of this type of spreader bar, you're limited to style. And certainly we call our slings that go on here the high easy range. So if you're looking on the website, have a look at the products, and they're divided. So you've got the loops and you've got the clips, and it's because of the spreader bar. So the high easy range will come with these clips, and this is a specific clip, a universal, a de-answer clip that is unique to Silvalea, but it locks onto this stud with a clip. But having this type of hoist, then we're limited to shape. It's usually this shape, which is the high easy. This is a standard one, just to show you. The legs are quite short, so it's quite useful, again, for long limb amputations, because the legs only coming up above the knee mean the sling legs are really short. You can just see the aperture there. So if you've got short aperture, then we need to worry, but short limb, then again, it's the same thing. If it's too short, it may slip backwards, but a long amputation, then you're fine. If you have short or through hip, this type of hoist, then we can offer you the all-in-one. So this is an all-in-one. But what we've done is we've filled in the aperture. So compared to this one here, it's got a full aperture. So if we just put it around, Jude, okay, around the, put it on the inside clip. It actually then buckets the bottom. So it's like the recline, basically. So it's really smooth here. Hold that for me. And we can just make out. So it goes round. Of course, then it will limit the access for hygiene. But it will then mean that anyone that's got the short residual limbs using this type of system, then the stumps won't slip back through the aperture. So if you have that situation, then look at the high easy all-in-one amputee sling. And again, because it's probably going to be left in for extended periods, it's made in this superfine plus spacer mesh. so it's softer and smooth. So it's a really good option for every scenario, but particularly good for amputees using this type of hoist. You have a question?
Patients who slip down in an in-situ sling, are they at risk of shearing and pressure sores?
Thanks, Julian. So slipping down. So often we have to work out why they're slipping. It could be that they've got slippy clothing, the seating isn't quite right. You know, perhaps they need to have a knee brace on or recline. So slipping, you're always going to be at risk of shearing if you're slipping constantly. So you just need to work out why. We did have a situation recently, actually, where they put this on, they put it on the bed, got it in really good position, right behind the knee, transferred, put them into their chair, and then they reckoned that the sling was moving. The patient was quite compliant, but then they wanted to hook the sling up again, and this bit then had moved into their groin. So it had lost position. And we thought, well, I don't really understand that. So we linked up like this, and we linked up and we watched what they were doing. And what it worked out was that they were hooking up the shoulders tighter. So it was on a higher loop. So it was subtly pulling the sling back during the transfer, and then of course when it was lowered down, it was too high from that point. So by just adjusting the loops, it prevented that. But you know, if someone's moving within it, it could be that the clothing is slipping. There's got to be a reason. If they're naturally really wriggly, then you're going to have to, you know, take into account repositioning them for the transfer back. But again, it's an individual situation, whether there's only going to be any pressure port problems. If you're absolutely concerned you've got someone at high risk of pressure, then you're going to have to take the sling out. But then you've got to think about, am I going to get it back in easily? And it can help with slide sheets. You know, if you're doing having to take the sling out by using slide sheets to get the sling in, there are lots of techniques with slide sheets to help you.
Or perhaps the thinner fabrics, Mandy, would that help? The in-situ superfine. So
we do have several other options of fabric. Certainly you can look at, you know, different lighter weight fabrics. It depends on the style. So for amputees, we tend to use this. But there is a lighter weight fabric called a superfine. Any questions like that, though, and you've got an individual situation, please just let us know, and we can link up and perhaps do an e-assessment and talk through other options for you. Any more, Bree? So those are the slings that you've covered. Starting with, you know, the most compliant situation to more challenging. There are options which I know can be confusing, but please, you know, look at the website. If you have a question, email customer services. We've got a really good team that will help you with questions. I do have a very good poster, which I've got a question.
Just one more question.
Sorry.
Would you say it's possible to fit an in-situ sling in a chair, just more difficult?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is possible. Certainly, I've seen that done really well with a back exchange group. They fitted that in, slide sheets, a technique with 2 carers, and it's possible, absolutely. But you know, you've got to have lots of practice and skill. But slide sheets in the chair, and yeah, it is possible. The other divided leg ones, of course, are much easier to apply in a chair. So the divided leg ones still can be in situ, subject to your risk assessment. So another one. So yes, so the other thing I've got is a poster. It's a selector poster. So the Sling Selector is a really good little at a glance poster of the slings we've got. So the slings on our website, you can see that they're laid out in families of shape, but it'll give you an idea of what's available, and then you can go to the website to see them in full detail. But if you'd like this poster, we can get that to you. We're just going to send out a little quick questionnaire. You kindly fill it in for feedback, but certainly some of these will be helpful for amputees. You can see the ones that we've talked about and the options we've got. So there are quite a few options there for you. So let's just wind or wrap things up. Do we have any final questions? Any scenarios you need me to talk through? We're good? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I hope it's been helpful. Please, use the customer services email address for any questions, or if we need to help you. We do have some dealers and some help that we can, if we know what your situation is, we may have samples for you to try. So please let us know and we'll do what we can for, because often you don't know till you try something. We understand that. So please use that. Thank you very much to Judith and Rhiannon for helping. And I very much hope you'll join us for future sessions. So thank you very much, everybody.